Even as many nations around the world struggle with COVID vaccine shortages, India is distributing millions of doses in its neighborhood and further afield. Most have been given away free, some commercially. The policy is in line with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's assurance to make affordable vaccines available to the world. But there are definite hints of Indian soft power at play, especially at a time that China too is ramping up its own so-called vaccine diplomacy.
This is the first consignment of COVID-19 vaccine to arrive in Afghanistan. It includes 500,000 doses and was donated by the government of India. The international press and a host of VIPs have been assembled to witness the event. So what's behind such generosity? An embassy spokesperson offers one explanation.
India is very happy that we have a long tradition of history and cooperation. In good times and bad, India and Afghanistan have stayed together, and we call it as a vaccine Maitri, which is friendship through vaccination.
Friendship through vaccination. While other countries are accused of hoarding vaccines or failing to secure enough for their citizens, India has already given away more than 5 million doses and may donate as many as 20 million to neighbouring nations in the near future. Among the beneficiaries are Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan and Nepal. We have been successful in bringing the vaccines to Nepal. For this, I would like to thank the Indian government, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the people of India, on behalf of Nepal's government, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and the people of Nepal. India is one of the world's largest vaccine producers, already meeting more than 60% of global demand. One of its champions is the privately owned Serum Institute of India. When COVID-19 hit, they teamed up with British-Swedish firm AstraZeneca. Together, they quickly produced and stockpiled more than 70 million doses, which put India in a position to be able to help other countries with their inoculation drives. For India, this is a source of national pride. It's also seen as a way of improving ties in the region, and some say leveraging any goodwill that might be generated. Others suggest Delhi is hoping to counter Chinese influence as Beijing conducts its own vaccine diplomacy, delivering doses of its jab to countries in India's backyard.
Joining me now is Anant Krishnan. He's China correspondent for the Hindu newspaper and author of the book India's China Challenge. He joins me now from Chennai. Anant, welcome. Now, India calls it vaccine Maitri or vaccine friendship, but is it primarily a way to counter Chinese influence in what India has always seen as its area of influence?
Well, Barish, I don't really think so, because if you look at the spread of where India has been sending its vaccines, it's, of course, focused in the immediate neighborhood. Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Nepal have received more doses from India than any other country. But India is also supplying vaccines to Egypt, South Africa, Brazil, now countries in the Caribbean. And I think it's more a question of India happening to be one of the places in the world that has the biggest capacity for making vaccines. And right now, Barish, it's more a question of demand and supply, where India is going to be producing way more than it needs. Just so far, India has vaccinated about 8 million people, and it has sent about 16 million doses of vaccines abroad, of which about 1/3 were grants and the rest on a commercial basis. So I think, Viresh, it's more a demand-supply issue rather than a vaccine competition. And as someone in Nepal recently told me, if India and China are going head over heels to supply vaccines, it's a good thing for the world.
But is there an element of soft power here that India is hoping to project?
For sure. I'm sure there is an added element. I don't think it would be the case where diplomacy or geopolitics is driving this effort. I think, as I said, it's more a question of India having the capacity to do so. But of course, I think for India, for China, for every other country, there is an added element. As you can see, India's external affairs minister has been tweeting almost every dispatch. The Indian envoys and the Indian missions in the countries that are receiving them have been quite active on social media, showcasing it. So, of course, as you said, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to showcase soft power for India, for China, for any other country. But my own sense, Baresh, is the idea of vaccine competition between India and China is something I think perhaps being played up too much in the media. I think China itself has 2 vaccines that it's producing in large quantities. As you know, they've controlled the coronavirus spread in China, so they do have the capacity to export them overseas as well. So I think it is a good thing for the world that India and China are emerging as big suppliers of vaccines, India especially being one of the world's biggest manufacturers. It's no doubt a good thing for the world. And if there is some element of soft power competition, I think, Baresh, so be it.
Well, let's just try and focus on the soft power. I'm thinking particularly of India's ties in the immediate neighborhood with countries such as Bangladesh and Nepal, which have generally been fraught in the recent past. Do you think that accidentally, if I can put it that way, they might see a slight improvement?
I think it is interesting where it seems that India's relations with the immediate neighborhood seems to be cyclical, where they go through periods of crisis and then they kind of patch up. And I think that happens a lot, especially with Nepal and Sri Lanka, where you've seen them gravitate towards China. And then you've had changes in government, they gravitate back towards India. My feeling is I think there is some amount of realism in Delhi, especially if you have smaller countries in your immediate neighborhood. It's in their interest to try and play India off of China to get the best deal. I don't think that dynamic is going to change. And I would expect that push-pull to continue in the immediate neighborhood for some time to come. And I think, Baresh, we should keep in mind that there's a spectrum. If you look at India's immediate neighborhood, I think that ranges from Bhutan on the one end, which has extremely close relations with India, no ties with China, to obviously Pakistan at the other end. And I think in between, it's a lot of gray area. I think if you look at Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, they seem to be moving to China and then away from China. And I think that kind of dynamic is here to stay. And I think you're seeing that reflected a little bit in the vaccines as well. It's quite interesting that China has been quite slow to be able to send its vaccines for whatever reason to countries in South Asia, barring Pakistan. China has very belatedly announced a $500,000 deal to supply vaccines to Nepal. And there was some controversy in Nepal, apparently leaking documents saying that the Chinese embassy there was pressuring Nepal to kind of take up Chinese vaccines. The Chinese media has accused India of blocking Chinese trials in Bangladesh, although later it emerged was more about the Chinese company changing the terms of the deal. So as you said, Baresh, I think it is playing out a little bit, but perhaps a little bit too much being made of it, in my opinion.
Ananth Krishnan,